Is this thing on? Welcome back to Big Mouth and fancy seeing you here in June. I'm very welcome, my friends, and especially my enemies. Come in, sit down, no touching. I don't do the touching. Are you feeling charitable? Then smash the subscribe button and the like button, and please do follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Man, and welcome to, what day is it today? Wednesday's edition of the DC Daily, and today we'll be reading an article about James Marsters' interview with Michael Rosenbaum on his Inside of You podcast, making allegations against Joss Whedon. And I'm going to try and deal with this in a very, very kind of way where I'm fair to all parties, because I think that's very important. We do not go down the kind of groupthink situation, and we evaluate every accusation on its merits. And after that, I am going to discuss Superman 4 and how I think the concept of the actual story could have made Superman 4 the greatest superhero movie ever told. And you think I've gone insane, but I will explain that after we talk about Mr. Joss Whedon again. So the headline is Buffy star shares Joss Whedon's disturbing reaction to Spike's popularity. Buffy the Vampire Slayer star James Marsters shares a story about an encounter in which Joss Whedon yelled at him over Spike's popularity with fans. By Molly Freeman. I'm not doing well today, am I? Buffy the Vampire Slayer star James Marsters shares a story about an encounter in which Joss Whedon yelled at him over Spike's popularity with fans. Marsters joined the show in season 2 playing the punk rock vampire Spike, who was part of the Angelus David Baranza group of vampires before his soul was restored and he became Angel. Spike wasn't meant to become a major part of the show, and his story seemed to end in the season 2 finale. However, in his short time on the show, Spike became a fan favourite Buffy character. As a result, Spike appeared in one episode of season 3 before returning in season 4 and eventually became a main character. Marsters worked with Whedon again when he reprised his role as Spike in the Buffy spin-off Angel. After Buffy, Whedon went on to become a major Hollywood director and showrunner, spearheading big beloved sci-fi western Firefly, helming the Avengers and Avengers Age of Ultron for Marvel Studios, and taking over on Warner Bros. Justice League movie when original director Zack Snyder exited the project. In recent weeks, cast and crew on some of Whedon's projects have come forward with accusations of abusive and unprofessional behaviour, including those on Justice League and the Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Now Marsters shares a story about one particular time when Whedon yelled at him during his tenure on Buffy. On the Inside of You with Michael Rosenbaum podcast, Marsters spoke about how Spike evolved from a short-term villain into a main character and love interest for Buffy Summers, Sarah Michelle Gellar. In talking about Whedon's theme for the show, that vampires should be ugly and not be portrayed as a love interest, Marsters revealed an incident when Whedon yelled at the actor. I came along and I wasn't designed to be a romantic character, but then the audience reacted that way to it. And I remember he backed me up against the wall one day and he was just like, I don't care how popular you are, kid, you're dead. You hear me? Dead, dead. And I was just like, it's your football, man. Okay. Now, before I go on, this, the validity of this is under suspicion. Let me tell you why. He tells you the side of Whedon, but why did Whedon all of a sudden back him up on a wall and start screaming at him? He must have lost his temper, right? But why? What happened? What I think is missing here is what James Marsters did to wind Whedon up so much. I'm not saying this behaviour is good. It's not good, but it's just one-sided, right? We don't have Whedon's side of it. Now, Whedon should come out and give his side of it, and we know that he won, right? Because he's probably been advised by his solicitors and people that he works with and for not to get involved in all this situation. But the point is, let me try and fill in the blanks for you, because I don't know. But this is what I'm going to say. I'm going to say that maybe James Marsters got a bit too big for his boots. Maybe he was thinking he was bigger than he actually was. And maybe this wound Whedon up, and that's why Whedon reacted in a bad way. That's how I see it anyway. As I say, I want to be fair-minded about this, And what's going to happen, of course, because Ray Fisher's come out, and I actually absolutely stand by what Ray said. I believe every word that Ray's uttered, and I believe that Ray is right for doing this. But what you are going to get is other people jumping on the bandwagon, because everyone has an axe to grind in the entertainment industry. Rosenbaum asked Masters if Whedon was joking, to which Masters responded, "No, hell no." The podcast host then asked if Whedon ever apologised. He didn't. Then, if Whedon was angry at him, Masters elaborated. He was angry at the situation. The Buffy actor went on to explain that Whedon was frustrated that Spike's popularity among the fans was adverse to his vision for the show. Although Masters frames Whedon's reaction as understandable at the time, it's difficult not to view the story through the lens of what's been coming to light about Whedon's behaviour on set. Justice League actor Ray Fisher claimed Whedon's behaviour was gross, abusive, unprofessional and completely unacceptable. More recently, members of the Buffy stunt team spoke out about Whedon's treatment of them on set, calling him an egomaniac. Together with these accounts of Whedon's other actions behind the scenes, Master's story further adds to the picture of how the filmmaker acts on set. As Fisher said, it's unacceptable behaviour. It's unclear if more stories like these will come to light about Whedon's behaviour, not only on Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but his other projects. It's possible they will, if folks are bolstered by Fisher, Jeff Pruitt and Sophia Crawford coming forward with their experiences. Folks may also feel emboldened to come forward by the Me Too movement, which has forced Hollywood to take a hard look at whatever behaviour has been excused or overlooked when it shouldn't have been. Historically, a showrunner losing his temper and yelling at an actor for something they have no control over may have been acceptable, but some, hopefully many, would argue it isn't. Perhaps these stories about Whedon on Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Justice League will lead to a better, safer and healthier environment for actors in Hollywood. Now, of course, she's female, and the way people speak is very, very alluring. So when you hear her say folks, it's the kind of thing how extreme leftists talk. And of course, she went straight to Me Too. And let me be clear here. Me Too have made no comment on Ray Fisher's statements. Absolutely disgusting, right? Because he's a man. It's as simple as that. And we've discussed this before, how they're only interested in their own ideology. So if a woman was being fondled or raped or sexually harassed, they would be on it. But Ray Fisher has spoken about behaviour and abusive and unacceptable situations on the Justice League set. And Me Too haven't uttered a word. And they're not going to. This does not interest them. But now back to James Masters. Before anyone starts on me, I have no axe to grind with James. I love James. I think James is great. He was brilliant on Buffy. He was on one of my favourite shows ever made, Smallville, as Brainiac. Now, he wasn't a direct copy of the comic book version, but they did what they could with the budget that they had. He had an amazing spaceship that could transform into anything. He was part of the ship. His essence was part of the ship. James gave a brilliant performance. He entered the show in season 5, pretending to be a mentor to Clark. He then revealed himself later on in that season. In fact, he was the big arc of the season. He then returned in season 7, if I'm right. He cameoed in season 8. I think he did come back in the Legion episode, which was great. And then he also came back in season 7 when Tom Welling directed, I think, was it the 150th anniversary episode of Smallville? And then he returned in another anniversary episode of Smallville in its final season where he played the good Brainiac. So I love James Masters. There's no question about that. But I just saw his statement and it is interesting. He kind of says in the interview that the behaviour from Whedon's understandable. But it's interesting to me, why would you come out with it? Why would you say that? Now, obviously, Michael, big fan of Michael Rosenbaum, best Lex Luthor, what a brilliant actor. Michael's asked him the question, and I suppose he felt, hey, let me be honest. Obviously, him and Michael are good friends. They work together very closely on Smallville. In fact, no one worked more with James Masters on Smallville than Michael Rosenbaum. So I don't criticise James. I'm just wondering what led to all this. If Whedon just, slammed him up against the wall and said, you're dead, you're dead, you're dead, just because he got up on the wrong side of the bed and he didn't like how the public and the consumer viewed the character, that's crazy, that's crazy behaviour. I better watch what I say, right? And this is all alleged, of course. We have no evidence of this, apart from what James has told us. I'll take James at his word. I like James. But the point being, I just feel there's another side to this that James didn't kind of, tell us about. And, this is where we have to be careful. The only thing I've heard thus far is what Ray said. That's the only kind of side of it that I believe. But we have to get real here and cut the crap. This behaviour happens on 75% of television and movie sets. It's a very pressured environment. Is it right? No. And we need to have a more friendly and open environment on sets. But that's a very difficult thing to do because you have to look at the studio, the networks, the pressure they put on the actors and the director and the writers. And these things are going to keep on happening unless the people at the top make it a better, easier, environment to work on. And that's my opinion on this. As I say, I back Ray Fisher's stance to speak out. It's great. He's still under an NDA, right? So he can't say anything. But if he's still under an NDA after, 2 years of being on Justice League, I don't think that NDA is ever going to break, and I don't think he's going to be able to say details. Obviously, James Masters has been able to do that. I think it's a very interesting situation. And here on Big Mouth, and especially on the DC Daily, we will keep a close eye on it. Let's talk Superman 4, The Quest for Peace. Now, I was watching this think piece about Superman, how the world needs Superman again, needs him in movies again, after what's happening this year, the virus we're not supposed to mention, Black Lives Matter. The world needs Superman. And one thing that the narrator was saying, it was a great video, and I forgot the YouTube channel because I'd really like for you to subscribe to it. I have no affiliation to it, by the way. But what he was doing and saying was amazing. All right, he wasn't a big fan of what Snyder's done with the character because he just sees that as a physical character rather than the emotional elements to Superman. I don't entirely agree with that, but everyone's got the right to their opinion. And he said an interesting thing, and he reiterated what Dean Cain's Superman said in the New Adventures of Superman. Superman is what I do. Clark is who I am. And this made me cry a bit because it's so true. And made me think about Superman 4, The Quest for Peace. Oh boy, was Christopher Reeve betrayed in both Superman 3 and Superman 4, but especially in Superman 4. Christopher Reeve was the one who had the idea to make this movie. The whole idea was to have commentary on the nuclear arms race. And I spoke about this briefly the other day, but I really want to go into this because I think it's very interesting. I think Superman 4, The Quest for Peace could have been the greatest superhero movie ever made. But because of the budget and because of, Golem Glover's production and Canon and the way they took money away from Chris and the production, it could never be what the concept could have been. So the whole idea of Superman 4, The Quest for Peace is there's a class at school having a discussion about the nuclear arms race. And there's this little boy in the class who's just disinterested, like that, not talking. And the teacher goes, is it Billy? Billy, what do you think? I know who could solve the nuclear arms race. Who? Superman. And then the whole class starts laughing at him. So it's all about this letter that this young boy writes. I'm not sure if it's Billy. Let's just call him Billy. Hey, maybe it's Billy Batson. In another world, it's Billy Batson. How awesome would that be? Anyway, right? So he writes a letter begging Superman. He goes, you're the only one who can do this, Superman. Rid the world of nuclear weapons. And the whole thing is Superman doesn't respond at all. So the Daily Planet, who's under new ownership, does this whole headline. Superman says drop dead kid. Now, there's a scene in Superman 4 in the Daily Planet where Clark takes his glasses off and he's standing by the window. He is in bits because he wants nothing more than to rid the world of nuclear weapons. But one of the rules that his father imparted in him when he sent him to Earth, that he couldn't interfere in these situations of humanity of the planet Earth. And so he goes to the Fortress of Solitude and he talks to the Kryptonian Council. And he goes, if you allow the world to rely on one man, you allow them to be betrayed. And then it echoes it, betrayed, betrayed. And I think the council make a great point. The world needs to be independent. Superman can be there to help. But once he becomes someone who gets involved in the nuclear arms race, then that's political. So the whole point is Superman changed his mind. He turns up at a press conference with the young boy who wrote the letter, and he actually goes to the United Nations. He addresses the United Nations in one of the best performances of Superman I've ever seen from an actor. And it got to be one of Chris's greatest speeches. I think Chris wrote that speech. Now, say what you want about Superman 4, but that moment was one of the best moments I've ever seen in a CBN. It's so emotional, and Chris did it so well. What's he going to say? Lois responds, something wonderful. And fuck me, he says something wonderful. Pardon my French. So this film could have done something very clever. So he's got these big nets. He's catching the nuclear weapons. He's putting them all on this net. He's swinging them into space and he's getting rid of them. Now, obviously, the subplot of this is Lex Luthor takes advantage of this to create the creature Nuclear Man. Now, the original take for Nuclear Man was that actually Mark Pillow wasn't going to play him and he would look exactly like Christopher Reeve. I think elements of people in the production didn't like that because it was going to be more expensive. But also, they'd already done a kind of Superman versus Superman thing in Superman 3, and it would have been kind of repetitive, so I kind of understand that element. But what they could have done here is, so in reality, if someone like Superman was getting rid of nuclear weapons, the governments of the world would act. How could they act? Well, they could have him killed, right? They obviously know about kryptonite, right? There's so many ways. They could have, in fact, we could have even had a story where the president or, figures of the world talk to Lex Luthor, who's an expert on Superman, right? And they use him, they enact him as an agent to deal with Superman. Now, that would have been a more interesting, intense, better plot, right? So the consequences are of Superman getting involved in the nuclear arms race is that the governments of the world turn on him, like they always would. But this film makes no commentary on this. It's a very quick and easy. The theme is good at the beginning, but it loses its essence. And all it becomes is a fight between Superman and Nuclear Man. It's a half-decent fight, and I love the burnt Nuclear Man footprints on the floor. Pretty nifty, VFX for the time. And actually, ironically, yesterday, I saw someone on Twitter who's trying to kind of perfect the visuals of Superman 4. Just a fan, and he's actually, he's improved upon the opening credits as well, which is really awesome. And he, again, I forgot his name, but yeah, he's looking to improve that movie, get rid of the wires that we could see when he's in space fighting Nuclear Man. It was such a cheap budgeted film. It's a disgrace what happened. And again, Warner Brothers were just distributing the movie, just like they did with the Sorkinds. They weren't really in charge of Superman, but there you have it. But so I believe there was a good movie to be had here. America and the Soviet Union were enemies. You had this whole thing with the nuclear arms race. Chris had a really solid gold idea to make some interesting commentary. Now, you know me, I don't really like real world commentary in fantasy movies that much. I think Zack Snyder and David Goyer did a great job with Man of Steel. And Chris Terrio did a great job with BVS, and there's some great real-world commentary in those films. But it depends what type of commentary you do it and how you do it. And I just believe there was an opportunity missed here to make some great commentary about Superman getting involved in real-world issues. And as he says in the end, he goes, "It's not mine to give. The freedom of war is not mine to give. I'm a human being now. This is my world now. I wish you could see the world as I do, as one world." Again, another great speech crafted by Christopher Reeve. This guy really cared about the world he lived with, but he was proud. He was proud to play Superman, and he just wanted to use the character for good in the real world. In a lot of ways, he did do that, and I just believe that this film could have been something extremely special, but they missed it. Because this film, to Golden Globus and Cannon, wasn't about making a great Superman film that everybody could learn from and enjoy. It was just about wheedling out 90 minutes of content so they could establish themselves as a big studio. And it's a tragedy that, Reeves' Superman franchise finished with Superman 3 and Superman 4. Superman 3 at least is a well-made movie, but really Superman the movie and Superman 2 are the best at what they did. And the whole thing's a shame because I do believe Superman 4 had a very good idea and a very good story by Christopher Reeve. And it was betrayed by the studio in every way that you can betray someone. And of course, with Zack Snyder, we have seen the betrayal happen again and again. Tim Burton's Superman movie, betrayal again, again, and again, and again. I mean, when I think that there's been what? There's been 4 original movies by Christopher Reeve, Superman Returns, Man of Steel, which is 6, BVS, if you count that, that's 7, and Justice League, there's been 8 movies with a live-action Superman in it. If I'm wrong, please correct me. We're not gonna count Shazam, by the way. I'm not gonna do that. I think when you look at it, and I think there's only been really 3 really good movies. I think no, actually more than that. Superman 2. I think that Superman Returns, I like it, but it has issues. Man of Steel is great and BVS is great. So those films are great, right? But the point being, Warner Brothers really haven't treated Superman very well. And Superman 4 is really evidence of that. And I just want to thank everyone for their support in the past 2 days. There's been some beef, hasn't there? And it's really nice to know that you've got friends that can back you up when you're being picked on and the toxicity is coming your way. And there's nothing also better on the internet when you're unfollowed by bots, because bots don't add anything. And in that case, less is more. I want this channel to appeal to all DC fans, all movie fans, all TV show fans. I have a lot of favourite shows and movies of the past and present. And I never want my platforms to be a think tank, a group think. I want everyone to be able to come in with different opinions without feeling they're going to be attacked. And that's what's happened to me in the past couple of days, because I made a couple of jokes, meaningless, harmless jokes. But you can't joke when you're in the middle of groupthink. And that's the problem. This is what happened to me when I wrongly got involved with the fandom menace, because I thought they were making good points, but ultimately I realised what they really were. And again, full of toxicity and negativity, and anyone who kind of speaks out of turn is then thwarted from the group. And this is what's happening within the DCEU fandom. Now, I love the DCEU and I love a lot of the fandom. And I said it the other day, I do find the Release the Air Cut mob a more embracive, friendly outfit. And I really like what they're doing. It's also disappointing that a lot of people from the Snyder community are not backing Release the Air Cut. That's a shame as well. I thought we were all going to come together for the same cause. Seeing Zack brought David onto the project, and it really is part of Zack's vision as well, it's odd that everyone's not supporting it. I just really want to be part of friendly environments. I understand when we say big things and big statements, people are going to react to us. But I also think it's important that everybody has the opportunity to make a joke and just laugh at themselves. This all kicked off because of Birds of Prey. I don't like Birds of Prey. I think there is a core of a good film there, but unfortunately the whole thing is built on Margot Robbie's hatred of men. And as we know, she's taking her circus now to Disney and the Pirates of the Caribbean reboot. That's happening because Warner Brothers are not interested in her all-female production company. They know. They're the ones who know what she did with Birds of Prey. They're the ones who fixed it. It would have been much worse if it was released in the state that her and Kathy Yan wanted to release it. Kathy Yan has come out and spoke candidly about what kind of film they were trying to make, about the male gaze, about toxic masculinity. Now, you don't do that to DC and to these amazing characters. Margot Robbie has spoiled what she built with David Ayer on the Suicide Squad movie. And in the end, everybody, and including women and men, said, we are not going to support your movie, Margot. It's toxic, it's rancid, and it's just not all that. That's the problem with Birds of Prey. Good performances, well directed, but at the end of the day, people didn't want to support it. And it's interesting that critics loved that film and all of that. Mate, I think it actually got a higher ratio of critics giving it good scores than Joker did on Rotten Tomatoes. And Joker is a much superior movie, But the people who support Birds of Prey hated Joker before they even saw it. Records amount of women went to see Joker movie. Psychologists, psychiatrists, mental health workers said that Todd Phillips got the situation and what mentally ill people go through spot on, and it was a very important movie. Birds of Prey wasn't an important movie. It could have been, but in the end, it's a forgettable 2-hour movie that really does nothing for anything. It's forgettable. People are not going to remember it fondly, and that's a shame. So when I saw this person put up a track from the film, I made a joke because I was triggered by it, but I wasn't toxic, and I had a laughing emoji, and as far as I'm concerned, that was the end. And then I was sworn at. I don't take that kind of behaviour lightly. As I said yesterday, I don't expect that kind of behaviour from people because that's not the kind of behaviour I aim at people. I don't swear and I don't threaten people. And that's it. I also want to, before I go, talk about Justice Con because I've got a lot of blowback about not supporting that. I'm not going to support something that's partly run by someone, as I said yesterday, who's abused me. That would be dumb, wouldn't it? Why should I support it? And I suspect that Zack Snyder's only supporting it because all the proceeds from that go to the mental health and suicide prevention charities, right? So Zack would support anything that was doing that. And good for Zack. But when I look at what they've got on offer, nah. No thanks. It's all about Justice Con for me, and I can't wait. I love the DCEU community, but I love all DC fans and all fans in general. And I want us to create a great open environment here. And I never want groupthink to take over it. I never want someone coming to this channel thinking I better not comment down below or I'm going to get attacked. That's not the kind of community I want to create. So comment down below. Don't be afraid. Say whatever you want. I won't allow anyone to attack you. And if they do, they're off. And that's how it works on here. Everyone has a right to speak. Just be constructive and be polite. You may even get a response by me. Comment down below. Like, share and subscribe. And I'll be back tomorrow with even more DC Daily. See you again soon.